Hello everyone and welcome back to Navis Novolite. I am Captain Zelnick and I want to apologize to everybody for my long hiatus. I had a very busy early part of the year, as I've stated in prior videos, and I just went on vacation. I went to DragonCon, I played some BFG with some of the people in the Discord server. It was a great time. I may end up setting up or at least suggesting that people go to DragonCon for us to take over a bunch of tables and blow ships up for a day or so. Either way, I got a request to do a tutorial on the Grey Knights fleet. Now, this was a bit difficult beforehand because the Grey Knights fleet in the current rule set, or at least as written right now, and in the Forces of the Inquisition PDF for Battlefleet Gothic, actually has a pretty bad flaw with its math, to the point where you can't actually take a Grey Knights battle barge at all. It is actually, points-wise, completely impossible. So, after making a bit of a ruckus and yelling a lot, I managed to convince the powers that be to actually fix the damn rules. Now, I'll be honest, I am not super happy with the rules, but they are good rules. It's mostly just a matter of preference. I would have liked to take more strike cruisers than less, but in the end, it does have precedent in the lore. It does make sense, so I can't complain beyond the fact that I can't take more strike cruisers. It's very sad. Anyway, this is a little bit different. We're going to be going over a few more in-depth rules in regards to the Grey Knights fleet because this document, which will be in an upcoming update to the fleet list made by Hainscrampf whenever he finds time. He's a very busy man. So again, go back, watch all my videos regarding the ships in question, go over the Space Marine rules. We're going to go over the Grey Knights rules as well, because they're going to have their own very distinct fleet list now. So you're going to need to know the specifics. All right, let's get started, and we're going to look at the general rules. Grey Knights count as Space Marines in all respects. There should be no surprises. Now, there is one extra rule that you need to look at the actual ship card to understand. Grey Knights are not just Space Marines, they're Super Space Marines. They're the Primaris Marines before Primaris Marines Primaris all over the setting. So, in fact, they do have all of the standard rules, and they have special rules on top of them. Namely, in boarding actions, they can re-roll their boarding dice. Second roll stands, but that's still an incredibly powerful thing that not even Khorne gets. So, bear that in mind. Let's go on to our fleet command. We have two choices of fleet commander. We have an Inquisitor Lord and the Ordo Malleus Lord. Now, you'll notice there is a 25-point difference. There is absolutely no functional reason in a rational world that you would ever take the Inquisitor Lord, because for those 25 points, you gain a bucket of upgrades. Namely, any vessel that embarks the Inquisitor Lord instantly counts as having Space Marines in all respects and counts as being a Grey Knights vessel. This is important because they gain also the hexagrammatic wards, which make the ship immune to marks of chaos. This is very, very important. So, for 25 points, you gain +2 boarding, +1 for hit and runs, and -1 on the defense for hit and runs. So it's 25 points. Of course, you're going to take the Ordo Malleus Lord. Now, there are a couple of consequences to this. None of them are bad. If an Inquisitorial cruiser is present, the Inquisitorial Lord must be placed aboard it. That includes the Ordo Malleus Lord. This isn't a bad thing. The Inquisitorial cruiser is a fantastic ship, and if you're taking it in a Grey Knights fleet, you want it to be Grey Knights. You don't want it to be just a Inquisitorial cruiser bumming around in the fleet. So, yeah, there's nothing wrong with this restriction at all. All right, rerolls. Either an Inquisitor Lord or an Ordo Malleus Lord they start with one reroll, and they can get another for 25 points. So very, very cheap, but you can only get 2 rerolls. Now, let's look at our capital ship options. 0 to 1, Grey Knights Battle Barge at 440 points. Now, the rules for the Battle Barge for the Grey Knights are identical when it comes to the actual weapon systems to a normal Battle Barge. You gain the benefit of the hexagrammatic wards and the fact that it's Grey Knights and it ignores all marks of chaos, and all of the other fun, the re-rolling your boarding value on top of it, and that's why it's more expensive than your average barge. If you take it, you must have an Ordo Malleus Inquisitor Lord to lead the fleet. It does not mean he will be on the barge, because if you take an Inquisitorial cruiser, he has to be on the cruiser. No, it doesn't make any sense, and I don't think it's going to be changed anytime soon. The Inquisitorial cruiser is 270 points. You can only have one. The Inquisition Black Ship, you may take a single one. It does not count towards or against other ship limits. It should only be taken in campaigns. Don't take it in a one-off game unless you are doing a scenario game, because they will hold you back very severely. They're just not that great a ship. And the Grey Knight Strike Cruiser, at 165 points, you may take one Grey Knight Strike Cruiser per 500 points of the final list. So, 1 from 0 to 500, 2 from 501 to 1,000, and 3 from 1,001 to 1,500, allowing you to take 3 in a 1,500 point fleet. You also have access to the Nova, the Gladius, the Hunter, and the 3 Rapid Strike vessels. Now, it is important to point out, these are not Grey Knight ships, okay? These escorts are not Grey Knight ships. They don't have the Grey Knight's rules. They are just normal Nova, Gladius, Hunter, and the Rapid Strike vessels. There is nothing at all special about them. The only things that count as Grey Knight ships are the Grey Knight Strike Cruiser, the Grey Knight's Battle Barge, and any ship that the Ordo Malleus Lord happens to be squatting on. So, remember this when you're doing your boarding action. These are normal Space Marines. These are probably their initiates, or maybe just their hyper-psychotic serfs doing all of the damage. But they are not Grey Knights. Okay? Attack rating. Grey Knight's fleet, led by an Inquisitor Lord, has an attack rating of 3, unless a black ship is accompanying the fleet, in which case it's downgraded to 2. This is because black ships are basically a giant rock around your neck, and not exactly the best thing to have in a fleet, because they're filled with psychers. It's a bad day waiting to happen. But in campaigns, this is definitely worth it, because black ships generate renown like crazy. Okay, Ordnance and upgrades. Vessel embarking the Inquisitor Lord can take Grey Knight's Terminator boarding party. They're just Grey Knight Terminators. Every Grey Knight's vessel in the fleet may embark an Honor Guard. No surprises there. Every Grey Knight's vessel in the fleet mounts hexagrammatic wards throughout the hull and ignores chaos marks or demon ship effects affecting leadership or boarding actions. So, the effect of a demon ship, the haunting effect, and the mark of Slaanesh have no effect on anything that's Grey Knights. Marks of Khorne do not double the boarding value. They also do not have benefits to crit damage, either that you get in the original Chaos Incursion list. Mark of Khorne, Mark of Slaanesh, and even the Mark of Nurgle's restriction on being boarded are all negated. They don't exist for Grey Knights. This is a huge benefit because a lot of these fleets, their bread and butter is either destroying your leadership or breaking you in close combat. Now, Mark of Tzeentch, completely unaffected. Mark of Nurgle's +1 hit to the ship, completely unaffected. So they're not all useless, just like two and a half of them are. Sorry, 3.5 of them. No, 2.5 of them are. An Ordo Malleus Inquisitor will only be called when intensive demonic activity threatens to overrun an entire sector. The enemy Chaos Fleet may add 1 Mark of Chaos or upgrade a cruiser to a demon ship at no cost, and may also do so as many times as there are Grey Knight Strike cruisers in the fleet, and the Ordo Malleus Inquisitor. So basically, if you have the Ordo Malleus Inquisitor and every Grey Knight Strike cruiser in your fleet, so it's a little weird that it doesn't also include the Battle Barge. You would imagine that the Battle Barge would 100%, be something that would, like, Chaos would be like, oh, we really don't want this to come and have a party on our doorstep. But I guess it only counts for the Grey Knight Strike Cruisers, which is, hey, that's the rules. Those are the rules. Now, this does mean, of course, that the Chaos player, if you are playing a Chaos player, gets a lot of free upgrades. Okay? A lot of free upgrades. Now, if you're in a campaign, as far as I am aware, these upgrades go away at the end of the battle. Just in case all of you are super excited to play Chaos in a campaign with a Grey Knight's fleet in it. But that is the effective rules for the Grey Knights. Now let's build a couple of fleets. Now the first one that I'm going to build is what I like to call the all of the fun stuff, which is the maximum amount of cruiser and capital ships that I can cram into this fleet that for maximum fun, because I want to have a battle barge. I want my Grey Knight strike cruisers. So the first thing I'm going to do is predictably grab the Ordo Malleus Inquisitor Lord. Plain and simple. Again, there's no reason not to take him. Take him. 100%. What the heck's wrong with you? Take the Ordo Malleus Inquisitor Lord. Next, we're obviously going to be doing a 1,500-point battle. We need that Grey Knight's battle barge. And then, of course, we're going to need the Inquisitorial Cruiser, because when in doubt, we're going to give our Inquisitor Lord a fancy set of wheels. Now, the Inquisitorial Cruiser has a couple of upgrades. You can replace its bombardment cannons with lances, which is not a good idea. You could also replace its prow launch bay with torpedoes. That's okay. It's not a bad choice. But it does, there's something to be said about the original layout with Thunderhawks on it. It's really up to you. Remember that it's probably going to get a better benefit out of its functionality with the Thunderhawks, but it's one of the few ways you can get a good torpedo salvo in the fleet, and I'll explain more of that later. Now, we're going to ignore the Inquisition Black Ship because we're not stupid. And now our 3 Grey Knight strike cruisers. Now, we cannot take Thunderhawk Annihilators, period. They are not available to us. And these ships can replace their prow weaponry with torpedoes or bombardment cannons. The issue is, you have to have half of them as normal. In a 1,500-point fleet, that means 2 of them have to be normal, which leaves the third one effectively up in the air. Now, if I were going to do it, I would probably have the third one be rockin' torpedoes. But the bombardment cannon option is 100% solid, and frankly, so is taking the standard one, because at this point, we're already dumping a bunch of Thunderhawks onto the table. Why not dump more? There's nothing wrong with that. Now, we are sitting at 195 points remaining. I prefer, in this particular scenario, to fill it up with 4 Gladiuses. That way I have a little bit of extra battery firepower. Oops, I definitely did the math there wrong. Did the math there wrong again. I'm not going to redo this video. I've already tried to make this video 6 times. So we do plus 45, plus 45. Okay, and that'll land us at 1485, and then I can take an honor guard on one of my Grey Knight strike cruisers. And congratulations, we are now sitting at 1495, a rather lopsided and very expensive fleet, but still a lot of fun. Now, if I'm going to take this a little more seriously and make it more competitive, I think everyone can imagine that I'm going to probably not take the battle barge. A 1,500-point fleet is just too small for something so points heavy. So I'll take, of course, my Inquisitor Lord. This time I will take the Inquisitorial Cruiser so we can have a nice ride, and I will take those 3 Grey Knight Strike Cruisers. But that leaves me at 865. I have a lot more room to play around with. Now, obviously, I am very much lacking in lances, so I'm going to take 6 Nova class frigates. Now, these things, remember, are probably among the best Imperial escort you could ever ask for. They're super fast, they are super punchy, and they're super hard to kill. Now, but I still have I have a 335 points left. I could add, if I just, for the whim of it, another squadron of Gladiuses, of Novas. I could throw in Gladiuses. I could throw in Hunters. And in fact, because I'm so torpedo short, I'm going to have a full squadron of Hunters along with it. I'm at 1405. Now, I have a couple of choices now. First things first, I'm going to take the Terminator Party on my battle barge. And I'm going to get myself, my Inquisitorial Cruiser. And then I will take one more reroll, and I'm sitting at 1480. I'll take the Honor Guard twice, and now I'm exactly at 1,500 points. Okay, so we're doing pretty dang well right now. We have a good beefy escort-heavy fleet. We have 4 cruisers. 3 of them are strike cruisers. But let's make something a little more interesting. Okay? Now, in this case, I'm only going to have 1 cruiser vessel, and that's going to be uh, my inquisitorial cruiser, and I'm going to take my fancy pants inquisitorial Ordo Malleus Lord, and now I'm just going to fill this up with escorts. Now, again, people sometimes wonder why I never take the rapid strike vessels. The answer is these are just better. Okay? If you look at all of the stat cards in every scenario, if I compare the Firestorm to the Nova, the Sword to the Gladius, the Cobra to the Hunter, it is always worth the extra 5 points because they are either faster, they have better arcs on their weapons, or they have better armor. They're always better, and the points that you are paying for the better ship are very much undercosted. They're very cheap upgrades for very, very good ships. So I'm going to fill this fleet with escorts. First, I'm going to fit in a squad of Novas, and I'm going to fit in a squad of Hunters. And you know what? I'm also going to fit in a squad of Gladii, because why not? There's nothing that's going to stop me. So now I have to remember how, it's 90, 180, 270. I can do math. All right, so I'm at 1180. I still have so much room. So I'm going to make sure that I can that I can actually do my reload ordnance and lock-ons, grab my second reroll. I'm now sitting at 205. I have 295 points to play around with. Well, 270 is another squad of Gladius escorts. I'm sitting at 1475. Now, we can look around and find upgrades if we so desire. There are a couple of things we can do. We already grabbed our 1 reroll, so we can take an honor guard if we so desire. We're at 1485. Now, obviously, this is not a ideal list because we are kind of missing. We have kind of a vacuum of points going on here, but we could also go and have a look at the actual ships and see if any of them have any upgrades on them themselves that may be advantageous. So if you will give me just a few minutes, because again, I have been working very hard on being interrupted every time I try to make this, I am just going to open up the PDF over here and look for Inquisitorial Cruiser. And please watch as Adobe Acrobat again crashes on me. Cruiser. All the way down to the Inquisitorial Cruiser. Here we go. So, what kind of upgrades can we play around with? We could replace our dorsal bombardment cannon with a strength 2 lance at 15 points. That's not really that exciting for me. Not really that interested. Now, it does appear though that those are the only upgrades that I could acquire. A 45 centimeter lance. It's not a ideal option, but it will fill the points. And it is exactly 15 points. So boom, 1,500 points. Not the best thing to do with your inquisitorial cruiser, but it does give it a little extra range and make it a proper imperial battle cruiser with some dorsal lances, even if they're not at 60 centimeters. So that's the Grey Knights fleet. Now, when you're playing as the Grey Knights, recognize that you have limited resources in a lot of areas. You're not going to have a lot of capital ships. You're going to be playing with a lot of escorts. But weirdly enough, that is what that all Space Marines were actually really meant to be. They were meant to have a few strike cruisers, maybe a battle barge, and tons of very lethal, very overpowered escorts. This is ironically more Space Marine-y than the other Space Marine fleets because people really wanted to have their Space Marine Crusade fleet when they weren't really allowed to have one. I personally love the Grey Knights aesthetic. I love their little strike cruisers, and I love my customized Grey Knights battle barge. Now, just so you know, and this is a very special little thing for all of you, there is in the Book of Nemesis a special Grey Knight's battle barge, known as the Diabolus Extremis, which is, I believe, 5 points more expensive, replaces the torpedoes in the prow with a psychic cannon. I recommend looking up Book of Nemesis and taking a peek. It's one of the very few good ships in that god-awful book. All right, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all again in the next video.